Hello, and welcome to Module 2, Session 5, which will be an overview of adaptive and assistive technologies and software, as well as tools for augmentative and alternative learning. The intended objectives for this session are, first of all, to introduce adaptive and assistive technologies, AT, and their necessity and role in higher music education. Secondly, to furnish participants with the knowledge and the foundational resources to identify and potentially also recommend appropriate AT to their students as well as to use in their classrooms. Three, for participants to be guided on the potential methodologies for institutional integration of AT aimed at enhancing inclusion and accessibility within student support services. Additionally, the course includes some practical examples, ethical considerations, as well as some resources for further learning. What are the principles and significance of adaptive and assistive technologies in the context of higher music education? First of all, AT allows for inclusive and accessible design. It enables a diverse range of learners the access both to equal as well as equitable music education. In parallel with this, it achieves this by allowing for individualized support. Each student with their unique educational needs is able to tailor their experience through their courses, through the AT that they use in their day-to-day lives, in various ways. And this provides personalized support and accommodation within the collective of students. AT also allows for community support and engagement. Partners such as teachers, peers, and family members can have better communication and can more effectively support and engage with students who are needing and using AT. AT prepares students also for professional settings as well as careers. In the 21st century, having a very technological skill set is very much required in order to succeed in diverse musical settings, as well as professional environments. And the acquisition of these tools can be very, very valuable attributes. AT allows for multimodal communication integration. What that means is it allows for many different ways of approaching education through various modes, such as through visual, auditory, and tactile, to enhance the understanding and expression of their educational and musical experience. Integration with music pedagogy. Ensuring that adaptive technologies and communication tools are seamlessly integrated into the educational curriculum, aligning these tools with the goals and content of the courses and making them an integral part of the learning experience rather than just simply isolated interventions. That is one of the main objectives and the points of assistive and adaptive technology. So what is adaptive and assistive technology? The definition for this can be any tools, devices, or software, or even systems which are specifically designed or modified to assist individuals with special educational needs, disabilities, neurodiversity, all in various areas, in performing tasks that might otherwise be challenging or potentially impossible for them without this assistance. The primary goal of these being to promote the students' or the individual's independence, to enhance, of course, their accessibility to their educational experience, and to improve their overall quality of life. These technologies can cover various domains, including mobility, communication, education, and daily living activities. Adaptive means simply to be able to do something that they could not otherwise do, and assistive technology refers to technologies that allow them to do something more efficiently. What are the target areas of adaptive and assistive technologies? First of all, customization and adaptation. Adaptive technology is customizable to meet specific needs of individuals. This may involve modifying the design, the features, or even the functionality of other devices and coursework materials to suit the user's abilities and requirements. Small example can be adaptive frets on a guitar for a student with limited hand mobility. 2, Accessibility features. These technologies incorporate accessibility features to accommodate a range of impairments or barriers, such as visual, auditory, motor, or cognitive limitations. Some examples can be screen readers, voice recognition software, or alternative input devices. 3, mobility aids. These are devices such as wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, or scooters, and they also fall under adaptive technology. They help individuals with limited physical and motor abilities. 4, communication devices. Augmentative and alternative communication, AAC tools, are a subset category of adaptive technologies, and these are specifically designed to help individuals with communication or speech impairments. 5, learning and educational tools. These are tools that assist students with special educational needs, disabilities, in accessing as well as participating in certain educational activities. These may involve specialized software, audiobooks, screen magnifiers, or tactile learning materials. 6, environmental control systems. These are systems which enable individuals with typically limited mobility to control their environment, such as adjust lighting, temperature, or electronic devices through alternative means in the form of switches or voice commands. Also, students with sensory needs can benefit very much from being able to have certain environmental control systems, such as being able to adjust lightings and temperatures, and etc. Adaptive assistive technology category examples would be in the area of communication, assistive technology to address barriers regarding speech and communication, neurodiversity, AT to address the needs of cognitive differences and different ways of learning, a different way of the brain functioning, and how they approach the educational process. Vision, AT to address barriers to visual materials, coursework, and environments. Hearing, AT to address limitations in areas of hearing and auditory reception. And mobility and physical access, AT to address limitations or barriers in mobility and physical access to environments, institutions. Subset categories of adaptive and assistive technology and their uses. First of all, augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC tools. These can be defined as a specialized system or set of strategies designed to assist individuals with communication impairments to be able to better express themselves. AAC tools are used by people with various conditions, such as speech disorders, language disorders, or motor impairments, which may limit their ability to communicate effectively through spoken language. AAC tools and methods are classified into 2 main categories. One being alternative communication, and these usually are either non-electronic or electronic devices. Non-electronic devices can involve things such as communication or alphabet boards, books with pre-printed words or phrases for sentence building. And electronic devices can be things such as SGD, speech generating devices, or apps that convert text and symbols into spoken language. The second category is augmentative communication, which is symbol-based systems. These systems use symbols, pictures, or icons to represent words or pictures. An example, and then also visual supports. Visual aids such as schedules, social stories, and visual cues. All of these help with the category of communication. Typically, a lot of these tools are used mostly with younger students and in elementary education, but some of them can also be very useful if known how to integrate them properly within higher music education as well, and can be very helpful in the classroom setting or even individually for students. Another subset category would be that of neurodiversity. What neurodiversity is simply the natural variation in how the human brain functions, how it learns, how it processes information. Neurodiversity recognizes conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and many others. These are not deficits, and this is meant to value the diverse cognitive styles as a part of human diversity. In music pedagogy, this means students may engage with rhythm, notation, practice materials, all kinds of courses in different ways. And assistive technologies like notation software or visual supports, practice apps, schedules, various things can help align teaching methods with the diverse learning styles and needs of neurodiverse students. AT for neurodiversity and music could look the following. Such tools such as text-to-speech and audiobooks are very helpful for students with dyslexia and or who have reading challenges to help them access better the course materials. If they don't have to read through their music history books and they can have an audiobook of it, or they can put in PDFs into these systems and they have the coursework read back to them. This can be very helpful when they have challenges with the visual processing side of their materials. Also, speech to text and dictation tools. This helps students, especially with ADHD or dysgraphia, to capture ideas quickly, to take rehearsal notes, to draw essays, to stay more organized, and to keep up with the educational process and their materials much more efficiently. Visual scheduling and reminders. These can be in forms of apps and digital calendars. And these are very helpful in providing structure and time management support, either for practice routines, ensembles, rehearsals, anything of the sort. And especially also, again, for students with ADHD, this can be very helpful in helping them manage their time. Things such as music notation software with accessibility features. Some notation software, music software, some example would be Muzică or Sibelius, have screen reader support. This could allow for flexible interaction with the notation by enlarging the symbols, color coding things, and having auditory playback to aid in comprehension. Focus tools, such as noise canceling headphones, distraction blocking apps. These are very helpful for, again, students with ADHD, but also other students as well. It helps them to maintain their focus and their individual practice time. Another subset category would be categories, actually, are then those of vision, hearing, and mobility and physical access in higher music education. Vision, referring, of course, to visual impairments and limitations, which may limit the vision either partially or fully, which make reading standard notation or using typical software difficult or impossible. In higher music education, this can affect various areas, score reading, composing, etc. Hearing refers to varying degrees of hearing impairment or loss, which can make accessing spoken instructions, lectures, audio content also very challenging. Mobility and physical access. These refer to physical disabilities or limited mobility that make playing either standard instruments or accessing the spaces within the institutions for rehearsals or performances very challenging. AT for vision, hearing, and mobility. Some AT tools which can be helpful for this. For vision, of course, there is Braille and tactile scores, which allow reading or musical notation by touch, and systems such as screen reader DAWs. For hearing, captioning is very helpful to display the spoken and lyrical content if professors or educators have videos that the students need to go through and watch. It is also helpful for there to be captions. Transcription as well, to convert audio to text and notation. And also things such as bone conducting headphones, which deliver sound without relying on the outer and middle ear. Then for mobility and physical access, you have adaptive instruments, maybe such as the example I gave earlier of adaptive frets on a guitar for limited hand mobility. Accessible performance practice spaces. Of course, this involves ramps, lifts, and stage or audience seating layouts, so that there's a possibility for safe movement and participation. How to implement AT within the institutions? How do students gain access to these tools, tech, and software? Typically, first of all, through the process of AT assessors. Universities or institutions might typically have a disabilities department or disability support services with AT assessors who are trained professionals who evaluate a student's individual learning, communication, or access needs, and then they recommend appropriate AT, and also then help them to support the integration process into their study and performance and learning. They may be employed through the faculty within the Disability Support Service or even as external specialists. The faculty role outside of AT assessors and the disability support services, faculty are not AT assessors. They don't have the training for it. And so what can faculty do in the situation where they need to provide AT to their students? And there are not any AT assessors or departments. Shortly, they can, if they spot challenges or barriers, they can then refer the students to disability services or AT specialists. If there are disability support services within the institution, then they will refer them there or to outside specialists. And then adapt teaching with available tools and flexibility, a process of understanding the needs of the students and finding the tools and means for through which to adapt. How institutions support access to AT. First of all, usually through an assessment and identification process. AT assessors and disability services will identify the student's needs, and some accommodations require formal diagnosis, but others can also be just part of classroom integrated norms. If there are AT that are very useful overall, these can be included into the classroom norm without requiring the full formal diagnosis and so on. Having a resource center, a central hub with adapted instruments, software, and hardware, training and ongoing support, sessions for students and faculty on how to use AT effectively in study and performance, and collaboration and feedback. To work with disability service, collect input from students, staff, and faculty to improve these provisions. This is how an institution would support access to assistive and adaptive technologies. What does the AT assessment process usually look like? First of all, a referral or intake, and this usually is given out from disability services, healthcare, or faculty. And it's an established process of identifying students who have these needs and who may benefit from the AT. 2, identify needs and desired outcomes. There's a consultation and assessment forms process. 3, skills assessment and device trials to test the possible tools. Practical evaluation of a student's current skills with instruments, software, or learning tools, and a trial of different AT options, maybe screen readers or adapted instruments or transcription apps, etc. 4, implementation. This involves procuring and integrating the chosen technology. Procure selected device software, either through the institution, through grants, or external services. And then the students and faculty need to be trained on the setup and use and integration into study and performance. And 5, the follow-up. This involves the checking in to see how the devices and how the AT is functioning for the students, adjusting to their needs, or even replacing where needed. Now, alternative assessment situations. In the cases where there's not a disabilities service department, AT assessors, or special needs counselors, etc., the procedure for a student to procure necessary AT devices, software, and support may be a bit more difficult and may extend to resources and channels outside of the institution. As far as what faculty actions can be to accomplish this in the absence of AT assessors or disability support services, as mentioned before, the spot, refer, and adapt immediately. Talking with the students, identifying the barriers that they have. Most times, professors and faculty will notice when a student is struggling in specific areas or with specific issues with the courses. And so then to spot these areas and to then try to have quick adaptations, alternative formats, accessible software demos, and flexible assignment formats. Connecting the student then to external support, keeping a referral list of local healthcare providers, AT specialists, and disability organizations outside of the institution. And this, depending on the country and the institution or the city, they may be found in various locations. There may be a website with such a list at the Ministry of Education website, or it may be accessible and findable on other websites and online platforms. And then helping the student to make first contact with these local healthcare providers or specialists. Documents needed, using a basic form or notes to record the barrier that the student has, what was tried, and what support the student says that they need. And then going on later to share this with the administration to keep a record and build a case. Building institutional pathways, the faculty's role beyond immediate support. To, first of all, push for structure. Requesting from the administration approval for simple assessments, request forms. Advocating for a budget to support AT purchases or external assessments. Then creating awareness. Communicate to students early in the term what options and contexts are available to them or exist, even if they are limited. Share referral process with colleagues so students get consistent guidance. Then support implementation. After external assessment, ensure that the recommended tools, softwares, devices, instruments, etc., are available or funded. And finally, provide flexibility in teaching to integrate these tools into lessons and performances. Here are some examples of assessment worksheets and forms. These assessment sheets and forms cover multiple pages of questions and assessment criteria, covering all the areas of what a student may need, their access requirements, their learning struggles, how they process certain information, all kinds of areas. Of course, their name and their basic information. Next, capital sources. When it comes to the financial aspect of gathering funding for AT and assistant departments, first of all, institutional funding. Requesting and establishing a budget for purchasing specialized instruments, software licenses, and hardware devices. 2, also potentially through grant opportunities, onboarding and communicating with government agencies, private foundations, or even industry sponsors that support initiatives promoting accessibility and inclusion in education. 3, collaborative investments, forming collaborations with tech companies, accessibility organizations, or other institutions to explore joint investments. Partnerships where both parties contribute resources and expertise. And then also sponsorship and donations, soliciting sponsorship or donations from businesses that specialize in adaptive technology in the form of instruments, software, licenses, expertise, etc. There are a couple of necessary considerations on the ethical implications of certain tools, tech, and software. One of those being the possibility for unfair academic advantages. And this would require assessing the implications of technologies that could provide students with an unfair advantage in assessments, such as the use of certain AI software, wearable devices, or communication tools, especially during exams or any form of other assessment of academic output. And secondly, plagiarism or copying tools. And again, with AI software or whatever it may be, assessing these tools that could lend to plagiarism, the misuse of academic sources, or the false representation of personal achievements or research. And in the following slides, there's listed short lists of possible tech and software and tools, such as here is a speech-to-text. You have versions which may be necessary to purchase by fee or subscription. And then there are some options for free. This is by no means limited or comprehensive. There are hundreds of such kinds of tools and tech, and online researching is very helpful. Here also by fee or subscription, Kurzweil 3000, Natural Reader, Speechify, so on. And these, yes, text-to-speech and speech-to-text are a little bit confusing. Examples of text software and tools for visual impairment, low vision, and blindness. Dancing Dots is one of the most recommended resources for both for music educators as well as for visually impaired, low vision, and blind musicians. Others also Braille score embossers, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and Be My Eyes app, etc. Tools related to musicianship. iGaze Edge is an eye-controlled speech-generating device which allows individuals to communicate, write, and have access to computer software just through eye movement. Chrome Music Spectrogram, which is a visual representation tool for sounds, as well as HiQ MP3 voice recorder for iOS and voice memos for Android. Can be used as a recorder and a practice diary to track progress or to take notes, etc. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the very best of luck in creating more inclusive and accessible classrooms and providing AT to your students.